I'll start off 3 years ago. I was sitting in class at Azusa Pacific University, and I was sitting in on an undergraduate class, and Paul actually sat by this young man, and he was the smartest student in the classroom. I mean, he was smart, and we were like, wow, that guy's he's got it together. So we got to know him, and for several years now, he's been a part of our church. He's now doing his MDiv at Fuller. MDiv, right?
MDiv.
MDiv. And it's a blessing to have Jeremy Carr with us, and he is going to come forward and deliver the message this morning. So if you would, welcome with me the guest preacher, Jeremy Carr.
I feel like that's kind of a lie. Hey, I feel like that's kind of a lie about me because Paul was by far the smartest person in that class, but he was working on his master's degree, and I was only working on my undergrad. So before I start, I just want to say it's my privilege and my pleasure to be able to deliver my first official sermon to you guys.
Yeah!
Woo-hoo! Like I know my relationship with One Voice has been kind of sporadic. Like here for semester, gone for Christmas. Here for semester, gone for the summer, traveling abroad in Israel and Oxford. So I kind of come and go, and then I'm working at another church, and now I'm back here with you guys. So I've always kind of thought of you guys as my family. So it is my pleasure to be here, and I hope this goes well.
You can do it.
All right. Matthew 9, starting at verse 14. Then the disciples of John came to him, saying, "Why do we and the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?" And Jesus said to them, "Can the wedding guests mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and they will fast. No one puts on a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch tears away from the garment, and a worse tear is made. Neither is new wine put into old wineskins. If it is, the skins burst, and the wine is spilled, and the skins are destroyed. But new wine is put into fresh wineskins, and so both are preserved." If you guys remember from last week, this was a passage that Paul shared with us. And what I want to do is pick up on the imagery of the wineskins. We talked about you can't put the new work that Jesus has done, the transformation that he has placed within our lives, and put it into the same old bodies that we have. I think in a real way this is talking about resurrected bodies, but the way we live as Christians needs to bear testimony to this new wine, this new wine that we have, and the new wineskins that we are. And so I want to talk about what it means to be transformed. But before we do that, I want to do a little bit of review because it's going to be necessary. So if you guys remember, Paul drew a couple of things for us. You guys remember this stuff? Remember what this is called? What Paul called this?
Dichotomy?
Dichotomy, yeah. More accurately, a false dichotomy. So you have truth A and truth B, and they exist in relationship to each other. And truth A is always attacking truth B, and truth B is always attacking truth A. And this is what we call a system. And what Paul was saying, that in any way that you interact within this system, like let's say one I'm familiar with is Johnny Cash is the greatest. And the other one is, what's the guy's name? What's his name?
Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan, that's right, yeah. It's such a forgettable name. So, Johnny Cash is the greatest, Bob Dylan is the greatest, and, it just kind of, they just interact with one another, they fight with one another, and it all exists within this system. And Paul was saying that true freedom is being able to exist outside the system, to not be enslaved to one position or the other. To be able to see that Bob Dylan is a pretty good folk artist, and so is Johnny Cash. So this is one picture that he gave us, and then he gave us another one where we have make sure I draw this right. So we have a system and God, and then the system kind of replicates itself, perpetuates itself through practice. And I don't know if Paul gave it this name, but do you guys remember what he called this? He called this institution, like an institutionalism. So whenever you find an organization like a church or a business that has this awesome idea, for us it's the gospel, and just continues to perpetuate itself rather than the idea, we call that an institution. So this is all review. It'll come to you as we go. And so where does transformation happen in all of this? We're here, and this is what transformation is, for us to be able to get outside of the system. That means operating within this is to operate in the old wineskins. And the new wineskins is this freedom. Freedom can't exist inside here no more than new wine can be in old wineskins. And so what I want to talk about is how do we become new wineskins? What does that look like? What does that mean? What does it mean for us to make the transition out of the system and to find true freedom? So jump with me back to Matthew 9. So there's a couple things I want to point out within this passage, verses 14 to 17. First of all, what Jesus says here about old wine and new wine, old wineskins and new wineskins, happens within the context of the institution of fasting. People are coming up to Jesus and criticizing him because his disciples don't fast, like the Pharisees, like the scribes, like all these religious demigods that were running around in Palestine. And Jesus says something radical to them. He says, why would they fast? The bridegroom is here. It's a wedding. It's not a funeral, you know. Like there's going to come a time, he's talking about himself, of course. There's going to come a time when I leave, and then they can mourn, then they can fast, then there can be sadness. But while I'm here, there should be rejoicing. And so there's something about, well, so that's the institution of fasting. There's a system, which is Judaism and Torah. And the Pharisees and the people challenging Jesus are perpetuating it through this practice of fasting. Fasting doesn't serve the system to carry people to God. Fasting just perpetuates itself. So you fast because you're supposed to fast, because that's what you do as part of Judaism. It goes round and around and around. And Jesus says, I'm here. There's something about my presence that trumps the institution. There's something about me being here that means you don't have to fast anymore. So there's something about the presence of Christ that radically transforms the way we should look at ourselves, our families, our church, because Jesus Christ is present. And in us, he is present for the world. But more often than not, we become an institution and we perpetuate our own beliefs and our own systems, and we're operating within that dichotomy. We can't get out. So, let's see, what's the best way to... For Judaism, the law was the center of everything that they believed. The Torah was the center of everything that they believed. And so the old wineskin for them was the strict adherence to the Torah. And Jesus says, I can't function within that. The new life that I have for people can't function within this old system of Torah, this old system of the law, the Mosaic law. And that's not the case for us. Like we, for the most part, understand that the Old Testament isn't complete without the New Testament. That we don't need to follow Torah. And we pick and choose, like, yes, keep the Ten Commandments, but I can still eat bacon in the morning. So we're very flexible with that. So the law isn't the problem for us. But I want to submit that we still have our own Torah. We have our own law. And for us, it's truth. We are either truth A or truth B. And it's absolutely propositional. This is what it is. Like, this is true. The Bible says so. And that keeps us within this system, just like the Torah kept the Jewish people within this system. And so what I want to do is I want to look at truth. And I want to figure out how to get away from it, which is a little radical, I realize, that we're going to kind of leave truth in the dust. But I promise you we're going to find something far better than truth. So would you turn with me to 1 Corinthians 13. Most of you probably familiar with this chapter. It's the love chapter. It's spoken at weddings very often. But I bet you guys didn't realize that this is a very epistemological chapter. It talks about knowledge. It talks about truth. And it talks about the falseness of the certitude that we think we have in life. Start with me at verse 8. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part. Then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. So now faith, hope, and love abide, these three. But the greatest of these is love. So in light of what we just read, I want to ask the question, how much can we really know with absolute certitude? Absolute certainty. It doesn't leave very much for us. It talks about the vanity of wisdom, to borrow an Old Testament phrase. We have knowledge, and we do have truth. I love the imagery of looking into a mirror dimly. You see something there. Like, I can tell, like, if I'm looking into a mirror, all right, I have glasses. I think I part my hair on the right. You know, I think I think I'm white, but I can't tell because it's too dark. And so I know something is there. I know there is truth. And if the lights were to come on, I'd be able to see myself, and I'd be able to say, oh, you know, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. But for us to look into the world around us, and for us to even look into the Bible itself and say, I know what this says with absolute certainty, is ridiculous. Because Paul says it's about as easy as making out something in a mirror that's dimly lit.